All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order of October 21st, 2021. The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I need a motion to approve the minutes of July 15.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Second, okay. Any further discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Robbie, the treasurer's report?
Yeah, let me see it in there. Nothing really happened since the last meeting. So, a total liabilities and equity of $5,242.86.
All right. Motion to approve the treasurer's report?
So moved.
Dick.
Second.
Seconded by Fritz. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Robbie, the budget.
Yeah, you can see our budget in there. Not projecting any income for next year, but we got our dues in there, the COG tire event, and then the website and some advertising costs. So,
Okay. That's going to be a motion. We need a motion to approve the budget as enclosed.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it then. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Our advertised 2022 meeting schedule dates is enclosed. You all can see that. I think they're all the same, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing I did do was, I still put the Chamber of Commerce for our main meetings, even though we
Be
have
somewhere
talked
else.
about moving it around
Yeah.
like we've been doing. So unless you want me to change the Chamber to somewhere else, but that's kind of been our home base.
Okay, that's good. I don't have a problem with that. Does anyone have a problem with that? Okay. I need authorize the administrative secretary to send delegates selection letters in December.
You want to make a motion to advertise this?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just thought it was automatic. We need a motion to advertise the 2022 meeting schedule dates.
so moved.
Second. Yeah.
Deb?
Deb. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion to authorize the administrative secretary to send delegate selection letters in December.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Fritz, thank you. I'll second it. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Do we want to have an introduction of different people? Probably would be a good idea. Okay, I want to introduce everyone. My name is Lyle Hoovler. I'm from Salisbury Township.
I'm Jill Dunlap from Westmead Township. Gary.
Gary DeVore from the Tazewell Herald.
Fritz Snyder from Vernon Township.
Rob Horvat from Vernon Township.
Dick Dice, East Mead Township.
Deb Merritt, Cambridge Township.
Brad Roy, State Representative.
Thank you, Brad.
I'm Ryan Dubay, Northwestern Rural Electric Cooperative.
Stephen Cardle, Northwestern REC.
Okay. So now I'm going to turn this over to Ryan and Steve so we can talk about solar panel development.
Alrighty. I see we have a couple latecomers in. I got some handouts for you. These back to you real quick.
Thank you, thank you.
So, here to talk about solar. I don't have any great presentation for you. Just some general ideas to cover, but if anyone has any questions as we're going or any specific situations you've dealt with, I'd be happy to address those. As I was talking to Jill before we started, this is one of the rare situations where we don't necessarily want government out of the way. It helps alleviate a lot of the questions for these solar developers to come in to have ordinances in place so they know what rules to follow. They know, sizing limitations, setbacks, all the things that might be included in zoning amendments, height, visibility, decommissioning, and removal. Those are some big items that we were talking about beforehand. As we've seen development with other energy sources over the past decades, there's always the question of what happens when it loses financial viability. Do we just abandon the equipment out in the field? It helps ahead of time to establish some guidelines and some rules of what's expected and some different avenues for you to follow in case that doesn't come to fruition. Pennsylvania, we are the #3 producer of electricity across the country. We are only exceeded by Florida and Texas. That energy mix has been changing with different incentives and programs have been put into place over the years, but we have roughly 16% in alternative energy across the state. And of that 16%, only 6% of that is solar right now. In the last 2 years, we have seen at Northwestern the same amount of solar installed, actually in about 18 months, as we had in the past decade combined. In the state, let's see, I did take that down. 2020 saw 2 times the 2018 and 2019 combined totals. So this is really ramping up quickly. Other states that have saw some earlier adoption had some good incentives in place that really helped to push that. This is purely a cost realization now. Pennsylvania doesn't have necessarily any great incentives to help with the install. So just as the prices have come down, now the feasibility is coming up. So 80% of installs across the state were residential. The other 20% were mainly in large setups such as Penn State or the Eagles Stadium. Those were some very large systems that came on in the last couple of years. With the residential systems, we're looking at between 400 and 1,400 square feet of install. So to give you an idea of what we're looking at for a footprint, a mobile home is roughly 1,400 feet. So if we're talking a ground mount system, there's a considerable amount of space that's going to be used up. So again, we get back to the conversation of setbacks and what's visible for our neighbors, but not in my backyard conversation. And then the permitting process, again, removing the guesswork for the installers and residents alike. A lot of the smaller systems are being self-installed right now, and it helps to set up a permitting process that establishes the difference between a residential and a commercial size system. When we're looking at residential, they're pretty standard. So as long as we're meeting standards across the industry as far as structural engineering and electrical engineering, there really shouldn't be any big questions in there. So that permitting process will really help to streamline everything for everyone involved. And then I'd like to remind everyone that there is a great resource in our Department of Environmental Protection. Their website set up for municipalities specifically to consider the solar. This packet comes right from that website. Really gives you some good templates, some walkthroughs, what the process looks like, and things to consider failures and successes that you can compare, and then of course contact information if you want to reach out to those individuals that have already dealt with this. So that's my long-winded presentation. Any questions, particularly on the residential side, I would be happy to answer. Steve is my engineer that I wanted to bring him along because in case there were any real tough questions on the commercial side.
So there's a kind of a township over in my neck of the woods, and they kind of did this whole process of having to come up with, ordinances and rules kind of on the fly after a company had already come in. So what is that I feel like that has that something you've seen, kind of like the retroactive trying to put in rules, and how difficult does that make that process when there's already a solar company knocking on your door?
Sure. So on the national scale, we've been involved in some meetings where they've discussed that as essentially being a cost for some major developments. Larger companies that are looking to put in several megawatts worth of installation are motivated because of the site location. Easy access to transmission lines, easy access to the land. So if they are so interested, if everything else lines up correctly, they will push and they will fund and help along that process. But without those great motivations, all other things being equal, we're looking at two land areas and one has those regulations and the other doesn't. They're going to just err on the side of caution and go with the beast that they know.
As we get older, everything gets older. I see that now there's a lot of the coal-fired power plants are decommissioned. Nuclear plants are being decommissioned. This is really probably the way to go. There's a lot of questions like, is there problems with, how do you clean these things? What happens to the solution is it going to contaminate the ground or something? I mean, we don't know any of the answers to all this stuff, and I do think that a lot more needs to be brought out before we get involved deeply, especially in the commercial side. I don't really see that in the residential so much, but in the commercial, when you have a large 100-acre field and we got to go through and clean the panels, do they just dump this on the ground, or is there a way to collect it, stuff like that? That probably needs to be brought up on the ordinances, I would think.
Absolutely. You just want to make sure you're covered all the way around. I mean, even going back to our conversation about landowners, we talked about, for anybody that doesn't know the difference, small scale and utility scale. When we're talking small scale, we're talking residential, small commercial. We have seen quite a few companies come in and ask us about utility scale, which we'd be talking about megawatt systems, so very, very large systems. A lot of the projects we've seen between 5 megawatts to 20 megawatts wouldn't even incorporate Northwestern REC because of the capacity of the system, and our system can't handle that. So with that being said, normally what Northwestern REC would do is they would just handle the lighting load at the facility. So the lights, if there's maintenance buildings and so forth that need electricity to it, we would provide that. But it's really up to the landowners to determine in these contracts that they're seeing that they're being covered from beginning to end. And we talked about the decommissioning, and are these facilities going to be removed from your property, when the time comes that, the facility has reached its end life. So those are all things that landowners need to be thinking about, and I strongly advise anybody approached by any third-party company to present those contracts to a lawyer who knows what they're doing in that realm.
Also to be considered things like ground cover and vegetation management. People can get pretty creative on that. I'm thinking goats. That's actually a very popular solution, all natural, sure. Ground cover could also include things like gravel or a weed block barrier, but that gets back into the what do we want to see as residents when we drive by? Do we want to see overgrown grass? Probably not. Do we want to see a field of black tarp material across the ground that's not allowing any water to soak in? So there's different avenues that have been seen across the country that we can, I guess, benefit from being able to see some of those examples and judge how we would like to see it around here.
And I think there's already specific grasses and covers that they're already expecting to be on these utility scale large solar fields. Actually, there's a company locally, Ernst Seed, everybody knows Ernst Seed. They already have quite a few contracts with utility scale solar facilities where they are supplying the seed that is to be grown underneath the arrays. So it's already having impact on local businesses here.
On the residential side, once you've installed one, paid for it, are there any additional costs that come along through the course of time? Or is there any taxes out there that they're trying to get a piece of?
Not that I'm aware of right now on the taxing side. Maintenance, you do lose some efficiency on them getting dirty, just regular dust. So oftentimes companies will offer a plan, a maintenance plan for a small fee, particularly for roof mounted, where it's not so easy to get up there and deal with it yourself. The ground mount, not as much of a concern.
And you just put those on your homeowner's insurance?
Yes.
The cost of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's an important consideration for the individual that's looking at putting them on the home is the insurance and the liabilities that would be involved. They get into pretty tight specifics as far as the structural engineering that goes along with these. Not allowed to be more than 18 inches off of the roof is the national code that goes along with this idea. And that's so that they don't get caught by a large gust of wind and fly over and hit the neighbor's house, things to that effect. So definitely recommended that you carry an appropriate level of liability insurance. When we get into the commercial scale, we require them to also insure some of the equipment that they'll be using of ours.
Yeah, this is more of a comment than a question, but just to, well, first of all, I don't have anything against solar. I'm kind of a all of the above. I think it's good to have a diversified, electricity generation portfolio. But just to put things in perspective, I was just looking at the PJM websites. So for the parts of 13 different states are in our power grid, and right now about 86,000 megawatts of electricity are being generated right now. About 41% of it is from natural gas, 32% nuclear, 13% coal. Solar is about 2.6%. So, and I'm not saying that's good or that's bad, but sometimes you hear talk about how, some people said we should go to all solar by the year 2030, stuff like that. Well, 20 years ago, the state passed a law before I was in the legislature that 1/2% of electricity that utilities buy has to be generated by solar. And we just got to that 1/2%, a year or two ago, after almost 20 years of getting there. So it is hard to imagine that we could go from 1/2% to 20% or 50% or 100% anytime soon. And again, I'm not against solar or anything, but I just think people need to keep things in perspective that 87% of the electricity being used right now at this exact moment when it's sunny outside, 87% of the electric that's being generated right now is from coal, nuclear, and natural gas. So, just kind of put things in perspective.
Yeah, and that really does go back to the legislators in establishing those incentives and programs that would help to promote the use of solar and installation of solar. Things like the renewable energy credits market comes to mind with that, where we do participate here in Pennsylvania, but when you compare our market prices to even our neighboring states, it's not much of an incentive. It pales in comparison. So those are different things that the legislative bodies can look at, and if this is a priority for us to move towards, there are certain key movements that we can make that will really help that to happen. When we look at residential, particularly as battery storage comes online, this is an issue of resiliency. This is an issue for our rural communities that are solely reliant on electricity for their energy needs, for pumping water, for cooking, for anything in the home. We have a great number of homes that are all electric. This provides an area of resiliency, not to get into the national subjects of politics, but without the grid needing to be there, we can still remain viable. We can still operate the home in a standard of living that we've come to enjoy over the last 100 years of electrification. This is a natural next step in that process because it's a safe way of generating. It's not that we have to worry about combustion. We don't have to worry about any biodigesters off-putting other gases that we maybe didn't capture. There's a lot of engineering technicalities that come into these other realms that solar is pretty well self-contained, easy application for people to get into.
Decommissioning of the large-scale solar is a concern for a lot of municipalities. What happens when the company walks away? Is there any movement in the municipal area to require securities or bonding or something to cover the decommissioning costs?
Yes, exactly that. And in this municipal guide, they go over a few of those options, probably in greater detail than I would be able to explain. But yeah, that is exactly the consideration. Even that in insurance, maybe having the municipality named as a line on the insured, so that if anything were to happen, the municipality would step in and ensure that decommissioning does happen up to the standards and releases the funds for that to happen.
Oh, go ahead.
So kind of along decommissioning, are there any negative environmental impacts of these decommissioned sites? Because I know a big thing now is these orphan wells kind of, and that to me kind of reminds me of a decommissioned solar field. That's something that produced and is kind of been abandoned. So are there any?
So part of the manufacturing efficiencies that we've been gaining with technologies in the last few years is really doing away with a lot of the epoxies that made up the inorganic materials in these panels. Once we've reduced these epoxies down to nil, all that's left is silica, some glass, some aluminum. There's some great benefit in grabbing the metals out of there, but for the most part, we can bury these inert objects without any major environmental concerns.
What about the batteries portion of his question?
Yeah, so the batteries, that's a technology that's changing very quickly right now, and there's almost too many categories to encompass into one statement. We are moving towards away from the lithium cobalt and into the lithium iron phosphates. They're primarily iron by weight. There's a great incentive to recycle these, and they basically put them in great big grinders, get them down into a powdered-like material, and remove the valuable metals from it as they see fit. All the major battery manufacturers like Panasonic are building these plants. Along with the manufacturing plant comes a recycling plant. They're side by side.
My original question, I just thought that was a good question. Can you speak to sunlight and availability in this area? That's kind of a big question that we hear from people saying
Sure.
there's not enough sunlight.
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. Here we look at the efficiency of sunlight with the number of light hours that we get and the intensity of the sunlight. We give it a rating of efficiency of about 14%. And to compare that, looking down at Phoenix, we're in the 25-26% range. So that is to say that if we want to create the same amount of power here as what we would down in sunny Phoenix, we need more panels. Before the prices really came down, that quickly became cost prohibitive. The same setup generating everything you would need down there might cost 30% more because we need 30% more panels up in this area. But now that these costs per panel have come down, we're bridging that gap very quickly. It's not cost prohibitive to get in the size array that's needed to satisfy the home. Great question.
question. I'm the wrong person to ask that.
Deb, you have anything?
I don't, actually.
Okay.
We're working in Cambridge Township, obviously, and hopefully November, we will be adopting our ordinance for accessory solar systems as well as the principal solar system. So we've kind of been through this process for a year, and it's a learning experience.
Sure.
Dick, do you have anything more?
No.
Robbie?
I'm good.
Fritz? Good? I know you're good. I have nothing else. Okay.
Thank you.
You have anything more you want to say?
Do you want to provide any information on this, like limitations and so forth?
Oh, yeah. So limitations on our system size, we have a 25 kW array limit. And the sizes I gave earlier, that comes out to that about 1,500 square foot. But that's our delineation mark. Anything above that, we say you're into the retail market, and that's, again, likely not something that Northwestern can serve. But that gives you an idea of what, in our rural area, for our members, what sort of size systems we're going to be looking at. And of course, I have my card up here. You're all welcome to get my info if you have any questions. You know, the co-op is very happy to help out with anything that we can with the council.
I just want to mention that Penn State Extension has been having a large series of webinars about solar power, and one specifically for landowners and negotiating with the companies, what to include in their agreements, what to watch out for, and then on the economics. It's been a large number of webinars. I've looked at a few, but there's a lot I haven't seen yet.
I'm currently attending Penn State World Campus, they call it, online, for energy sustainability and policy. And really proud of Penn State for being a leader in that area for our state.
Okay. If there's no other, is there any other business that has to come before us today? If not, our next meeting is January 20th, 2022. It'll be at the chamber office at the Diamond Park, unless something else pops up. But let's plan on the chamber office. I don't know. Anything could happen by that time. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh, I was just getting ready to say we're going to be here for a while. Robbie, second?
Second.
Second by Fritz. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. And thank you guys.
Thank you.